Hannie Rayson, welcome to Booktopia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What made you wake up one day and find yourself interesting? I've always found you interesting, so why did it take you so long?
I thought you were going to say, I've always woken up and found myself interesting. Well, I'm not sure. I think because of the drive was always there to write as a playwright, and that meant inhabiting other people. So the importance was to get out, not to be a writer who sat at home examining the murky depths of my own psyche, but to be a writer who, who went out there and discovered how the world works. That's always been my modus operandi. And I was from quite young. I was friendly with Wendy Harmer, and I remember that she had a little card, a business card in her wallet, and it said Wendy Harmer Adventurous. And I thought, I want one of those cards. That's who I want to be. I want my writing to be the ticket to do that, the passport. So it's always been about like being out there and being inside other people, and how I do that. Look, it's slightly cultural as well. Growing up in an Australian family where who do you think you are? You're not that interesting. A little bit of that, not in a stultifying way, but certainly in a kind of cultural way and that men are always more interesting, because I had a lot of them around in my family.
Well, you do write a fantastic portrait in this book of your father, who was quite a larrikin, liked a bit of a tipple, wasn't too good at holding on to money. I'm just wondering, Hannie, what traits, if any, you think you've got from him? Do you see yourself as being in any way your father's daughter?
Well, I didn't. The interesting thing is I didn't until I wrote the book. And that was one of those things where he died when I was young. So
How young?
Early 20s. And he was sick when I just left home, and I've been dying to get out to go to university. And then I had got to university, to Ormond College, and I'd been there 2 weeks, and he had this massive stroke, and I had to go home again to help my mother. So that was a real blow, really. I mean, it was awful for everybody. But I was thinking of myself too. Damn.
So selfish of you, Dad. Really, your timing.
Yeah, it's shocking. Anyway, when I wrote the book, my mother had said to me, "You're the one who's most like him because you're the big risk taker." And I was thinking that's not true. And in a way, it still isn't true, except that he was such a kind of character. He was so colourful as a person. I think that's what made me have this kind of modus operandi, that I was drawn to oil paintings. I loved people who had big personalities and were funny and emotionally volatile.
And larger than life.
Larger than life.
And you describe yourself as a watercolour by comparison. That's one of the most poignant lines in the book. I thought, my God, this woman is completely delusional.
Well, she's a charcoal. No, yes, anyway, I don't really know what to say any more than that about it, but that's right. I did find him that. So I thought, and there's things about my father that I am like he is. He has a kind of degree of largesse, and I know that I also have channeled his strangeness about money. So, for example, most of my life, and I will give myself away as a total princess when I tell you this, but I've sort of had this image of myself and money as a writer that's just unrelated to what the task is at hand. So I write plays, and then if I'm lucky, money falls down like the downpipe outside our house into my bank account, but it doesn't relate to anything I do, because there's no parallel between the energy and effort and time that you put into anything and what you earn. So there's no point equating the two things, really. And I think my father was like that. We're so optimistic, we're so sure that the universe will shine benignly on us, that we get ourselves into puddles or fixes, or pickles was the word I was looking for.
Pickles, yes, that's right. But you kind of get yourself out of them too.
Well, sometimes, I mean, the moment with him, really, I really felt like watching my father was like watching a man with a yo-yo. And there was a moment when the yo-yo, and he could always summon his good fortune back up. And then there was a moment when I just thought, oh my God, that yo-yo is just spooled along, and no matter how much he's yanking to try and get it up and to try and, you know, resume life as we knew it. That's not going to happen now.
Really unspooled one last time.
And that was to do with having had a stroke. And he was valiant. He was a valiant heart in everything he tried after the stroke. But, you know, in the end, he sort of dropped dead on Saturday morning.
It seems to me that when you are writing a play, you love the research process. You love going out into strange worlds and discovering the syntax and the dialogue of people who operate in tiny pockets of existence that you previously never thought about. So there's a wonderful piece in this book where you go off to a pigeon fancier event, and you're clearly outside your comfort zone. But it seems to me that you're also operating as a cultural anthropologist in your own neighbourhood, that you love observing Fitzroy and all that kind of inner city bohemian behaviour, don't you?
I do. I love Fitzroy. I was at the Fitzroy Town Hall last night talking. It was a great big crowd and it was really fun, and it was also the site of this really wonderful play that my husband and I had done, which was the school play when my boy was in grade 5, and it was about the battle to save the Fitzroy Pool. And that was an amazing thing. And actually, an audience member asked me where that sat in the hierarchy of great experiences in my life in theatre. And I thought it was pretty much up there. You know, it was a glorious experience being with. We had 120 young children on stage, and
which for some people would be their idea of hell.
I know, and might have been my idea of hell under other circumstances. But it was kind of interesting because it was about a community event, and the children were involved in saving the Fitzroy Pool, and so it was a kind of children march on City Hall thing. And being Fitzroy, the parents were the band was made up of parents, and so it was called Neil Kelly and the Aquatic Orchestra, and the doors of the Fitzroy Town Hall opened, and 120 children were like marching, singing this anthem. We are the children of Fitzroy, the sons and daughters of Fitzroy. And it was sort of, the parents were crying and laughing and clapping, and 1,000 balloons were let off and everything. It was great. And it was about teaching children about democracy and having responsibility for making stuff happen.
Well, that's what I was going to say. What I love about the way you characterise Jack, your son in the book, is as this very evolved citizen, where he's kind of understood what it means to be an active participant in the world around you, not to be, the sort of characteristic, sort of cliche only child who's thinking only of himself, is hopeless at sharing, is not well socialised. Jack, in this book, I have to say, has some of the best lines. Did you give him those lines, or is he naturally quite witty?
He came out of the womb being funny.
Right.
He is a funny person. He's a serious person too. He's a lawyer, which was hard for him being born into our family. He had to fight to be a lawyer. But
unlike you and unlike your dad, he was quite interested in money.
Yes. He was interested in money, and he was interested in, although that, in a funny way, that's kind of toning down a bit more too.
But I remember he was quite entrepreneurial at the school fete.
Yes.
From a very early age, he was quite interested in the idea of making money.
Yeah, he was. And he also had, at Aftercare, he had a little radio show that broadcast into the playground. So he did that as well. And look, I was a kind of only child. I've got 2 brothers, but they were so much older than me that by the time I was in just getting into being 10, they were 20. And so it you know what I mean, there was a time of my teen years where I was really alone. And so like Jack, I had to find the ways to be, like every kid does really, to live in an imaginative world. And that's when I started sort of, making radio plays and performing stuff and writing stuff and everything. And Jack did all that stuff as well.
And I suppose you could say that even as a lawyer, in a way, he's still performing. You've got to stand up as a lawyer and argue a case, and you've got to have that kind of flamboyance. So the theatrics of your life probably have not been wasted on him. But he is just the most wonderful character in the book, because he's sensitive, and he's very worldly without being cynical, and that's quite a sort of fine line.
But he was always sort of like, I had a period in my life when I was a single mother for 5 years or something, and so he had to come with me to everything.
He was your date.
He was my date. And I do remember one occasion when we had to go somewhere for work and we were in the plane, and I looked at him, he was about 5, and I said to him, "Oh, Jack, did you bring the Panadol?" And he went, "Hannie, you're the mother." Like this.
And he was right, Hannie.
He was. But he just sort of found a way, I suppose, to be comfortable in adult presence. Like
found a way to cope with you. Now, one of the things that's very, very clear from this book, which is so full of kind of infectious joy and happiness, is that you are very happily married. And I was wondering whether you think that it's much harder to write about happiness and about all the things in life that give you so much joy and pleasure, when really all around you the culture is much more eloquent, it seems to me, about sadness and loss and disappointment and dysfunction.
Oh, it's such an interesting question. I think about this in the theatre all the time, and I think about it with this book. And I was really heartened to hear Elizabeth Gilbert at the Perth Writers' Festival talking about the fact that creativity does not need to be sourced by torment. I think this is just the most liberating and wonderful thing, and it makes me feel great to think that creativity, and I have been plagued by this idea, and I remember laughing at Deb Oswald talking about something to do with, thinking I'll never be a writer, because my parents are not divorced. That thing where you feel like things had to have gone bad for you to be able to be creative. But the fact that creativity in yourself can be sourced from joy or wish or observation, all sorts of appetite and everything, is really important to say, and not to be plagued by that, because often people end up spending, and I have spent times of bleakness, and they've been very unproductive times for me. So I think, why would I want to go there? Let's try and not be that person, because that's bad for everybody, not including my family. Very tedious if you can get out of it. But I think happiness, writing about that, is about kind of attending to and enjoying the celebratory nature, say in this instance of my marriage, which is a lovely thing, a lovely part of my life, one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, it's pretty clear from this book that that's the case. On the other hand, you're not frightened in this book of going into a couple of very dark places, and there is a really heart-pinchingly sad moment in the book when you describe losing a child, and you're at Bundanon, you're at Arthur Boyd's property, you're somewhere that's sort of bathed in a golden light, partly because of that you're in the presence of a great artist and you're in a beautiful place, and this terrible thing is happening to you. Was that the hardest part of the book to write?
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was. I actually found that I loved writing that story, even though it's a funny thing, isn't it? It can't really, because you're separating out slightly from the new experience. Other things were harder than that. Do you know? Just getting back to the happy marriage stuff, actually it was really hard. I do not want to appear smug.
No, but you don't. That's the thing. That's the great triumph of the book, is to me, you appreciate what you've got. You know exactly how lucky you are, but there is absolutely none of that kind of insufferable smugness, because that would be really off-putting. Yeah.
Awful. So, guarding against that, the treachery of writing about others, people that I know who are close to me, and trying it out on them, and people not always saying to me, invariably, most writers, I didn't say that. And I think, well, you did.
Actually, so suck it up.
Yeah, but not suck it up. Okay, well, I will put in your totally banal idea of what you said and attribute the excellent thing you said to somebody else.
Now, talking about your very happy marriage, your husband says that you live on planet Hannie, that your view of the world is
like the downpipe thing, that kind of...
Yeah, a little bit on the sort of rosy-tinted spectacle kind of spectrum. So what's life like on planet Hannie? What is it that you're not seeing on planet Hannie, or what is it that you're seeing more of on planet Hannie?
Well, I don't have a job, so that sets me apart from a lot of people. I do, obviously I get up in the morning. My pattern is that I walk to the ABC with my husband, and that sort of starts me going, and then I go to the library and I sit there and I work. till home time, which varies depending on how into the work I'm how into it I am. So that is a job, but I don't have to work for the man, and that changes everything, because my planet life is really that it means that I can do as I want in order to satisfy the demands of the narrative that I'm working on. And so that is the only thing that guides my working life, really. I mean, sort of, it's not entirely true. Like, I write a column for the newspaper and there's a deadline for that. And
when you write a play, it's a commission, and you don't know whether the commissioning body is going to like what you've written or not. And then there's the whole headache of collaboration, which of course is also joyful when it's working, but a nightmare when it's not.
Yeah. And the more you get involved with things where there's more money, then there's more people who have a say, and so you're running around in circles trying to please everybody, and I hate that. That's what I love about this book. I loved about the process. Like, nobody minded.
No, and no one was there telling you what
And
to
do you know what, Cara, the thing about that is that you think, will I miss it in the theatre? Will I miss the opening nights with all the sort of 500 to 900 people there, and the frock and the parties and all that stuff? Will I miss that attention? Because my book will slip into the bookshop, and it'll be one of those books where other writers tell you go and you turn it around to face the front, and that's about all the attention that your book gets, is you slipping into a bookshop and doing that thing. But actually it's not been like that at all. It's been very personal, the whole attention to the book. In a way it's lovely. Like, sometimes in theatre foyers people say, oh, love the play. And you're just thinking, did you? Really? You are, it's a bit uncomfortable sometimes. A
lot of that foyer stuff is very, very fake, whereas I don't think the same thing actually operates in bookshop world.
It doesn't. People just come up and lay their book down and say, I had that experience of having a miscarriage, or I'm a part of a step family and I know what it's like to be rifling through the singlet drawer in the morning and thinking, how come all the singlets are over at his house?
Now, one of the things that you write about in terms of the sort of, I love the domestic detail of this book. It's so rich in terms of, kind of know what your kitchen's like. And on that topic, there's a lot of sort of push and pull and tension around food and the sort of pressure of the dinner party in this book. There's a chapter that I think a lot of women will recognise, the angst that goes with preparing food to impress your friends, although you never admit that you're trying to impress them. So my final question to you today, Hannie, is if I were coming over for dinner tonight and you weren't here tied up in this business, what would you make me for dinner tonight?
Well, in Melbourne, it's getting a bit cool, so I would start with a soup, I think. If it was you coming, I would go to a huge amount of trouble.
Whereas your husband would say, why can't we just give her chops?
He would. He's a big chop man. He would have them stacked like a wood pile out the front of the, like chops and things like that, in a wood pile out the front of the front porch, if it were up to him. He'd like to have steak and green salad, and I would... I can't think of an actual menu now, but I know I would probably do 3 courses. And
some of it would have to be Japanese. It seems to me, in terms of degree of difficulty, you write about these obscure...
ludicrous things, because I would love to be able to cook Asian food very well in all its types, Vietnamese and Chinese food and whatever. But, and so, yes, and ingredients that are possible to source and everything that would be create stress and... be overachieving in a way that now is embarrassing. And because I told the story about having a mouse, we had a famous film producer come to our house for dinner, and during the dinner I saw a mouse scurrying across the kitchen floor, and the famous film producer saw it too. Because of that, I go to book events and people make cupcakes with a chocolate mouse on top. I've become the mouse woman. So when I say to somebody, would you like to come to my house for dinner, the response is like, I'm not really sure what I'm doing on Thursday.
I will be right over. Thank you very much, Hannie Rayson.
Thank you, Caro.